The Florida Panthers were not opportunistic against the Winnipeg Jets in their Saturday night matchup, but on today's show, we're going to discuss how the Florida Panthers play through their last 8 games is good signs that if they continue this, they will qualify for the 2023 postseason. We're going to discuss that next year on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into the Sunday, March 12th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I am Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also subscribe to the YouTube channel and send in your 5-star rating on whichever podcast app you listen to for your chance to win some tickets to a future Florida Panthers game. So best of luck, everybody. So the Cats, they fall to the Winnipeg Jets by a final score of 5-4. In this back-to-back for them, they get 3 out of the 4 points. And with Sergei Bobrovsky going on the back-to-back, which is necessary for a goaltender who you're going to need to ride with, mostly for the rest of the season, as you're still desperate and in need to just do whatever it takes to come out with wins and come out with points while you're in this playoff race. And it is a Sunday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, which means it is another edition of Sunday with Slemp. Alex Slemp from Full Press Hockey is back for another edition of the show. Alex, welcome back to Locked On Panthers.
Hey, good to be back, Armando.
Thank you as always for coming on. And let's just talk about the Florida Panthers game versus the Winnipeg Jets. Of course, Paul Maurice's former team, and with the Panthers coming out with a big overtime win over the Chicago Blackhawks, and the Panthers lately, in the beginning of the season, they have fared very poorly in overtime, and they on Friday they proved, not necessarily proved, but they were getting a win. They got a win, and even before that, they were starting to not drop that extra point in overtime periods. And of course, unfortunately, it didn't happen on Saturday night against the Winnipeg Jets. But the story of this game for the Panthers is continuing to play from behind, and for the Panthers, it's been the first period most of the season that has been a positive for them, and it's just for the final period, it's just been blowing the leads, or whenever they were behind, it was teams extending leads. But for this one, it was the Panthers falling behind early once again, and this isn't the Chicago Blackhawks that they were playing this time, so it was going to be a little bit of a harder hill to climb for the Panthers. I mean, and the Panthers were dominating possession, but it was just the rush chances that were hurting the Cats in this one, of course, especially on that second goal, where we haven't seen Sergei Bobrovsky give up that questionable goal, but that second one from Nikolai Ehlers, where he doesn't creep up too much on his on his crease, beats his beaten far side, but also the story is going to the box 4 times in that first period.
Yeah, definitely a few things to be frustrated with there, but I think overall, I look at this back-to-back and you're pleased with it. Obviously, you're not pleased with the very start of that Chicago game, but you get the 2 points, so it doesn't matter. The Panthers haven't been too strong in back-to-backs all season. In fact, out of the 9 they've played so far this year, they've only won that second game of the back-to-back once. That was against Boston right after Christmas, I believe it was, or sometime around then. And I think only 3 of the games have actually even collected a point. So the fact that they came away with something here was big for the team. I like that. But it was a game that, they could have they could have and should have won. They dominated possession. Again, we saw them pepper the Jets with shots. That's kind of being sort of a tale of the season, out shooting the opponents by so much, not getting anything. But some defensive lapses. That Nikolai Ehlers goal shouldn't have happened. It was weird to see Bobrovsky not being so aggressive on his crease, come out and take that angle away. There was also the Nemestikov goal, where he didn't get picked up off the draw. I didn't like that. I know it's kind
Mhm.
of one of those things where, like, whose player was it? But Duclair, you see him just kind of standing there on that, and then Forsling is trying to come across from the other side to take the angle, and it just, that was one where I kind of saw Duclair. I was like, maybe you jump off down and do that, but a few defensive lapses, shooting themselves in the foot with the penalties. I mean, this team needs to figure that part out and stop taking so many penalties, and give themselves a chance. But like you said, you want to look for some silver linings. It's the fact that this team has been able to battle back. We were very used to that last season, being down the cardiac cats, and we haven't seen much of it this year. So having them come back against the Blackhawks and then doing it again the next night, being tired on a back to back, that's a really good sign from this team that they believe in themselves and that they don't feel that they're ever out. So that's really good stuff moving forward.
Yeah, and the Nemestikov goal you're talking about is the second goal, the one that made it 4-2 at the time. And
Oh,
just even after the first period, Winnipeg only had 9 shots on goal, but six of them came on the power play. So it just goes to show like what the Panthers were continuing to do on 5-on-5, and also some of the missed opportunities. I mean, the Panthers. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk with another 3-point night, which now the Matthew Tkachuk teams, whenever he scores 3 points, are 40-2. Unfortunately the second loss came last night, in overtime for the Panthers. I mean,
of
getting
course.
getting the first one on Montour's shot that's off the end boards and all, and then with this team coming from behind multiple times, and then of course on the power play goal, which the Panthers were great on the power play in this one, getting 3 of them, with Barkov, Ryan and Reinhart playing tic tac toe, right before making it 2-1, and then for the Panthers, it was also missed opportunities. And I know it's cool that Mark Stahl has gotten 3 goals in the last few weeks after getting none in the first 60 plus games of the season,
Mhm.
but a big missed opportunity by Eric Stahl, to score when Hellebuck was right out of his net and then hits the post, and then in
Mhm.
overtime, Sam Reinhart with
Oh.
an open net, with Hellebuck being a little late, going laterally to his left, and then misses the net, and then Mark Scheifele gets the game winner as he beats Sergei Bobrovsky in overtime. But also for the Panthers, I mean, it's been that type of story for this season.
Mhm.
Control the puck possession, but as far as quality shots, opportunistic, the the Winnipeg Jets were just that, opportunistic on Saturday night.
Yep, that's just the way it goes sometimes, and uh, super frustrating having that happen to you, where you get all these chances and you're not capitalizing, and you give up one to the opposing team, and they make it count. So those are frustrating. That overtime one though, yeah, you look at Reinhardt, empty net. I know it's a tough angle, but then it goes down the other way, and Scheifele shows him how that angle's done. You're like, come on. So
Mhm.
that one's tough, but that stat about Kachuk, that is something else. 40-2. It's good to see his play turning up. I know there's a lot of people on the socials who are kind of, seeing the lack of goal scoring he had. Obviously, he contributes in a lot of other ways on the ice, not just in the goal department, but people kind of noticing, hey, 1 goal last 12 games. He is your best player, or arguably the best player on your team. You need him to be performing and putting up those goals and assists during this kind of a run. People kind of make note of it, and then he gets 3 points. In one period against the Blackhawks, and then 3 points the next. So I don't know, maybe he like felt it all from us who were talking about it. So it's good to see him turn it up, and be the superstar that he is, because the Panthers need that the rest of the way going forward. So it's good to see his game going up. But yeah, frustrating that this team struggles to find the back of the net. And I honestly, I don't have an answer for that. I can't figure it out how they generate so many chances, so many shots on net, and they're just the goals aren't there. It seems like an anomaly. I can't figure it out. If you do, please let me know. But I have no idea.
I mean, it happened during the Bob Bugner years too with this team as well. And also, I feel like I also feel Anthony Duclair is getting close to just
Yeah.
breaking out. And the before when Tkachuk scored on that power play goal which was his 30th of the season. That's worth noting.
Mhm.
So another 30-goal season for the Florida Panthers for Matthew Tkachuk. And Duke had a beautiful opportunity, and Nemestikov hooked them, and that was going to be a for sure goal for Anthony Duclair. His only goal was an empty net goal against the Tampa Bay Lightning, but
Yeah.
I feel like Anthony Duclair is just so close to just breaking out for him coming back from injury. And of course,
Yeah,
situations
absolutely.
where Mark Stahl and Gus Forsling were both pinned to the boards. No calls on that one, but of course, seeing the replay again for Gus Forsling, he was falling towards his right, and it looked worse than it should have. And outside of that, when Lomberg and Stanley went to the box, the Panthers were not down a man really after the first period. So it's just they cleaned it up in the penalties.
Mhm.
So as far as the rest of the game, but as far as shooting yourselves in the foot really early, that's exactly what the Panthers did on Saturday night. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2. We're going to talk more of silver linings on what the Panthers have done during the last 8 games, the last 30, how they have performed in the third period, and with this play as of late, does it give us more confidence that they will make a run and make the postseason? We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about Athletic Greens. And our next partner is a product that I literally use every day. And I started taking AG1 because sometimes I need a little bit of a break from the Cuban coffee that I make for myself at home. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients support your gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All the things. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition with just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens are going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL Network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Back on this Sunday, March 12th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, where the Florida Panthers drop this game against the Winnipeg Jets by a final score of 5-4 in overtime, pick up a point. But overall, on the night, it was a net positive for the Panthers as the New York Islanders lose to the Washington Capitals at home. And somehow the Capitals, despite selling at the deadline, have creeped up a little bit in the standings for them. And Ottawa losing to Vancouver in regulation. But let's talk about what the Panthers have done over the last 30 games. Alex, they're 17-10-3, a 616 points percentage in that span since January 1.
Mhm.
Their last 8 is 5-2-1, which is a 785 points percentage. Yeah, it's a little harder to talk about this after a loss, but we've been talking about 750 hockey that the Panthers would need to play
Mhm.
in order to get to in order to get to in order to get to the postseason. Actually, I actually calculated that wrong. Hold on. It's not 785. It's 687. That's a 687 points percentage for the Panthers in their last 8. So that's around the area that they would still need to qualify for the postseason. But look at this. prior to the game against the Chicago Blackhawks. 5 goals in the last 4, one at 5-on-5, and only averaging 1 goal against at 5-on-5 in the last 6 games altogether. That's including even falling behind in against Chicago, against Winnipeg on Saturday night. Barkov, 14 shots on goal in the last 4 games since coming back, which the Panthers are 3-0-1 as well. This point pace for the Panthers in their last 8 still gives them an opportunity to get in. I know we're scoreboard watching at the moment still, but how are you seeing this last stretch for the Panthers? And I know it's tough when this team goes to the box so much that they don't give themselves an opportunity sometimes to pick up 2 points every night. But how are you seeing this pace for the Panthers?
I mean, it's great. It gives me a lot of confidence in this team to make the playoffs. Obviously, they don't control their destiny. They're still trying to fight their way in, but all those things that you just shared are indicative of a team that is totally capable of climbing the standings, making the playoffs here. You go back to, January 3rd. This team has only lost back-to-back games once in that time. That's incredible. It's a 3-game losing streak. So they are getting a lot more consistent. And this is sort of what we were talking about, how it's going to be 2 different kinds of seasons with the Panthers. All the new personnel, new coach, new system, yada yada. It takes time for that to all come together, and that was what we were seeing through October, November, December, and it was very frustrating as a fan to go through those growing pains. But now we are seeing the fruits of that labor, and you're seeing it not just in the wins they're getting, but how they're winning, the ability to come back, like you said, how they're limiting teams on 5-on-5 play. And really, you look at all they need to do, and it's if they can clean up their discipline, stay out of the box. I mean, this team's got everything going for it, and they can absolutely go on a run. The last 16 games, they have a couple of those 3-game win streaks sandwiched in there. That's something that was so elusive to the team, just a few months ago. So I like the way they're trending. And obviously, there's not much time to do it, and they're going to have to play fairly perfect hockey. But with what I have seen in the last few weeks, last couple months, even, I really like what this team is doing. The biggest or the most important thing when you're trying to make the playoffs and every game matters is to not fall into a losing streak. And the fact that they haven't lost back to back is big. And that's something Matthew Tkachuk said at the very beginning of the season. He said, good teams don't lose 2 in a row. This team hasn't lost 2 in a row since January. So this is a good team.
9-0-1 after a regulation loss for this Florida Panthers team. But I did do a little bit of research on Paul Maurice teams from I wanted to go a little bit more recent, which was his Winnipeg team from 2014 to 2022. And I kind of wanted to see if there were signs of change as far as his teams not going to the penalty box a good amount of times. And 2014 to 2022, his Winnipeg Jets teams had the second most PIMs behind the Pittsburgh Penguins. But what did the Penguins do? They won back-to-back cups during that span. So it's not always a 100% indication of wins and losses there. But as far as PK percentage, 7th worst in that span, as far as that. So of course, the Panthers are right now the 4th worst in the NHL. Excuse me, 5th worst right now as far as that. You get a few more kills. You stay out of the box a little bit. You're talking maybe like making up like maybe a difference of like 1 to 2 points, maybe a little bit of a different conversation. But this goes back to just style of play. And what do we mean by style of play here? It's last year's team, free flowing, run and gun, not always necessarily in your face as much as this under Paul Maurice. The Panthers are in your face on the forecheck. Sticks are in as far as trying to intercept passes in the neutral zone as well, and that's going to cause the stick infractions here and there. It's for me which doesn't bother me too much. The thing that bothers me mostly is the bench minors too. The too many men on the ice. That's just for me. It's just when it's inexcusable for this team. But as far as the stick infractions, it can be cleaned up a little bit. But as far as that, it also tells me that this is just going to be the continuous trend for this team. And I'm not sure if it's also personnel on the PK as well, but it's just also a sign of this team is likely going to continue going to the box based on what Paul Maurice's teams were from 2014 to 2022.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's just it. It's a style of play. You want Paul Maurice to be your coach. This is a byproduct of it. His style. He likes this in your face sort of play, and it's effective. But what comes with it? Well, yeah, there's a lot more penalties. So I think you kind of have to look at it if you're Bill Zito and say, okay, well, this is what we get. If I want to keep going forward with Paul Maurice and I like this system, uh, you have to look in the off season at getting, like focusing on getting really good penalty killers because at the end of the day, you're going to be in the box most likely every single night. So it just comes down to, okay, what sort of adjustments do we make here? If we can use his system, Maurice's system, and be successful and still scoring goals and winning games, then you got to clean it up in those areas. So I see Bill Zito kind of taking a look at this, find personnel that helps a PK in the offseason. Maybe you take a look at the special teams coach, right? Who is in charge of doing all the PK stuff and everything. You make some changes there, but as long as you have Paul Maurice behind your bench, unfortunately, you're going to be penalized more just because it's the style of play. Yeah, but bench minors that you're talking about, that stuff that's elementary right there. I mean, you take those in Pee Wee hockey that you can't be making mistakes like that. That is frustrating to see at the professional level. Maybe that happens, honestly, like once a month. It seems like it's a regular occurrence. I don't know how you're getting so mixed up in your line changes like that to be taking so many too many mens, but that is something that has to get polished up. But otherwise, this is just kind of what it's going to be. So, I mean, you can't bring in any players right now. So, I don't know. I guess you got to maybe try some different mixes out on the PK. Not quite sure how they want to do that going forward. I know in the playoffs it kind of changes and you just make a penalty kill designed against that specific team, and that's something that I'm sure Paul Maurice will be able to do. But going forward, I don't know how he's going to want to do that. So
Mm-hmm. No,
yeah.
no, no doubt. So the point, yeah. So the point in bringing that up is mostly if our expectations are that this team isn't going to be going to the box much for the next 15 games, time to temper our expectations a little bit when it comes to that. That's for sure.
Okay, fair.
When it comes to this team, but we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where it's time to kind of shift our focus on the teams above the Panthers instead of the teams behind the Panthers as far as the scoreboard watch on around the NHL as games in hand are starting to balance out. We're going to discuss this next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about Built Bar. And are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories? Then you got to try Built Bar. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but they taste like a candy bar and maintain amazing macros. And what's even better is that they're healthy. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't even need to wait around to get a box of Built Bars. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com, and now you can get them at a local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your local nearest Walmart today. Walk to this pharmacy section, grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, and coconut puffs. If you're close to the Sam's Club, grab a 13-bar box with hit flavors, brownie, batter, and churro. You can thank me later. Third and final segment here on this Sunday, March 12th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. And so and I tweeted this yesterday, Alex, where this 5-2-1 stretch for the Panthers, which has them at a 687 points percentage. The Panthers have had stretches of 3 days off twice, 2 days off twice, 4 days off coming up once. Now the teams behind the Panthers, none of them have now a better points percentage than the Cats. None. Especially after Ottawa losing to Vancouver last night. And of course, if we're trying to look at how those teams' games in hand will go, and if they tie with the Panthers in the next few days, will they pass Florida? Buffalo has 2 games in hand. If they win both of them, will they pass the Florida Panthers? No. If the Ottawa Senators get 3 out of 4 points in their next 2, where they're on a tough Canadian road swing, well, they'll play Calgary and Edmonton in the next few days, and the Florida Panthers face Ottawa twice. So will they pass the Florida Panthers as far as tie-breaking scenarios? No, because regulation wins.
Yep.
Washington, they can pass Florida. They've played the same amount of games. They're 2 points behind, and even and they can still pass them as far as points in the next few games. But if they tie, they still won't pass in the tiebreaker for them. So why am I asking this? It's time. I think we're at that point where it's time to look at the teams above, the Pittsburghs. Well, if Pittsburgh wins today against the Rangers, not so much. But I think it's going to narrow down to the Islanders here. So I think it's slowly becoming a 2-team race, and maybe even 3 teams, depending on what Ottawa does in the next few games. But it's time to really look and focus mostly on that. And the Islanders still have one more regulation win than the Panthers as far as that tiebreaker. That's a very important one there. And they're going on a California swing in the next few days, and they'll be playing a back-to-back there. And by the time the Florida Panthers play again on Thursday, they'll have 3 games in hand on the New York Islanders before playing the Montreal Canadiens on Thursday. And we spoke about, even prior to these big gaps of what I just listed, the 3 days off, the 2 days off, and now this one 4. The Panthers have been winning their games in this 5-2-1 stretch. And we're starting to see how it's starting to equal out. And for the Islanders, LA is not an easy task. I believe they're 20. Let me look at LA's home record real quick. They are 17-9-2 at home. So a pretty good home record for the LA Kings as well. They're going to face the Anaheim Ducks in that stretch, so I'm expecting a win. But still, you're going to have 3 games in hand at the end of the day when you do take the ice again. So as far as importance of what we're looking at, it's balancing out as the Panthers now sit points percentage wise. They are the first team out, and to not fret is where I'm getting at. Is if there is a little bit of a passing as far as points, the Panthers, that this 5-2-1 stretch, they've done what they needed to do. Of course, can it be better? Absolutely, it can. But the focus now is the teams that you unfortunately do not play again, because the teams that they don't play again are behind them.
Yeah. I think that's probably the only bad part of their schedule, is that they don't have any more games against the Islanders and Penguins here in this stretch. But you're absolutely right. Time to shift the focus. We're looking at Pens and Islanders, more so Islanders, unless Penguins bobble their next 2 here. Penguins kind of had a bit of a resurgence, and they're poised to kind of run away with that top wild card spot here in the next week. So I think we just kind of zero in on New York, and you look at their schedule. They've got this West Coast one that includes, San Jose and the Ducks. Obviously heavy in favor for the Islanders, but I mean, that's a big, the time zone shift, and I feel like that does have an effect. So maybe they only go 500 there, but by Thursday, you're right, the Panthers are going to have a really good idea about where they stand going forward. And the thing that I really like about their schedule is they had a lot of break here, and they did well in being able to rest, get healthy, win for the most part, like you said, 5-2-1. But now when they take the ice on Thursday, I believe it's the rest of the way. They only get a day off in between each game. I think they only have one where there's going to be a multiple, like 2 day off. And so that's really good for getting in your rhythm. Everything is going to be playoff style hockey. You have your game, you have rest, game, rest, game, rest. It gets you in a really good rhythm. If you happen to have a bad loss, you have no time to be thinking about it. It's just on to the next. And I really like that kind of a schedule for a team who's got their back up against the wall, really has to push forward. I feel like that's a schedule that is conducive to just getting the best out of your team. So it allows for rhythm and allows them to, I think, get on a good roll here. So I'm looking forward to it. There's gonna be a lot of scoreboard watching here. Yeah, absolutely. But looking forward to this last push.
And I'm looking at it right now, right in front of me. Only 2-day gaps twice.
That's what. Okay, yeah.
And that doesn't come till April, where after their Eastern Canadian swing, where they face their foes in the Atlantic Division, and then in between game 81 and game 82 as
there
well.
You go, of course. Right.
So even then, it might come to a situation where game 82 might be a win in your in situation.
Sure.
And I might be getting ahead of myself here, but on April 13th, when the Panthers face off against the Carolina Hurricanes at home, the New York Islanders will have already played game 82 on the Wednesday the day before.
Wow.
So there might be a situation where you might not need to scoreboard watch on that night when you play the Canes, and it's just everything right there in front of you. But 2 back-to-backs, you've gotten most of them out of your way. And I actually took a picture on my phone of the broadcast on from Valley Sports on what their record was in the second end of a back-to-back. Front end of a back-to-back, 4-4-2.
Mm-hmm.
Right at 500. Second end of a back-to-back, 2, 5, and 3. The graphics said 2, but after last night's game, it made it 3 there for the Panthers. So not great at the second end of a back-to-back. But in this upcoming stretch, their second end of a back-to-back in both occasions come at the Flyers and at the Canadiens. But both on the road, though, which the Panthers haven't fared well on the road. But opportunities against non-playoff teams, and the schedule has quite a few teams that are not qualifying for the postseason. Like we mentioned, Philly, Montreal, and Montreal twice, actually. But then the Toronto Maple Leafs 3 times in that stretch, which is frustrating. Yeah. But Ryan O'Reilly's not playing. I think he'll be out until the start of the postseason. So that's a little bit of a break for the Panthers. But we're gonna.
They only have 5-star forwards to face.
Yeah, only 5. but and then the New York Rangers, we're gonna see a look of the Vladimir Tarasenko, Patrick Kane New York Rangers, but that's only once there too. And of course, a big game against the New Jersey Devils, which Nick Fairbanks and I have talked about how they're this year's version of the Florida Panthers, which it's gonna be rough because I like the New Jersey Devils as a team, but there's an opportunity that they could get. I think they're a first round exit based on how good New York has loaded up. But so the schedule, as far as the back-to-backs, I think it looks great coming up for the Panthers on the road, and still a great opportunity against non-playoff teams. It's just those 3 games against the Leafs, 1 against the Rangers, and I think Carolina will likely be resting their starters in the last game of the season, so you can kind of throw that one away.
Right. Yeah. No, I when I look at their schedule now, I'm kind of thinking, like, where is it going to be best to slide in Alex Slemp for a game? Because as much as you ride in Bob, you can't go the rest of the season with Bob. So
correct.
I kind of think you're starting to look ahead. What is best? when you have a favorable matchup against, let's say, Montreal Canadiens, is that where you would go with the backup goalie? Or do you have to be like, no, we have to ensure we get these points. These are the points we get. And you go with that. And maybe you look at one of those games against Toronto where, maybe they're going to take us. That's where you throw in the backup and give Bob his break. So I'm kind of interested to see how they're going to finish out the season with the goaltending situation and what they'll do there. I don't know. You got any thoughts on where you give Bob a break in this?
If anything, it would be on the back end.
Yeah.
Try to get that first one out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
If anything.
Right.
Honestly, I could see it. I could see Alex Lyons come against the Flyers because that team is in shambles right now.
Oh, yeah. Poor Danny Briere taking over that.
And listen, the Montreal game was when Alex Lyon came in when Sergei Bobrovsky got hurt the last go round. So
yeah, that's right.
An opportunity there for Alex Lyon to still, and he was the reason why the Florida Panthers made that comeback against the Bruins right before the All-Star break too. So
sure,
we've seen some flashes of the veteran journeyman for the Panthers. He will likely get a game. In the past situation with these 4 days off, it was the right decision to put Sergei Bobrovsky out there. With the 1 day gaps after, Paul Maurice is definitely going to be asked that question on when's he going to get a game. He's going to get one, that's for sure. So we'll be determining that, but we won't need to worry about that for yet another week here when we talk about this Panthers team. So Alex, I want to thank you once again for joining me on this Sunday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Another Sunday with Slemp completed. I want to thank you so much as always. Tell everybody where they can find you online.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me, man. It's always fun doing the show with you. And if you want to check out some of my other stuff, fullpresshockey.com, you can catch some of my articles there. And then follow me on Twitter. You see it right there at the bottom, at Alex Slemp. So that's where you can catch all my Florida Panthers coverage. So, but thanks again for having me. I look forward to being here next Sunday.
Awesome, Alex. And I will see you next Sunday. And thank you once again.
Take care.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. Now make your second listen of the day, Game to Game NHL. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NHL with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. Follow Locked On Game to Game NHL on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. So I'm Armando Velez with Alex Slemp, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Where it's your team every day.